This is the Storyworks Roundtable, where we have conversations about craft. Because becoming a successful author begins with writing a great story. I'm opening this week's episode with some exciting announcements. First off, I had a personal essay published in December at Under the Sun Literary Journal, and the editor there has nominated my essay for the Best American Essays anthology, so hopefully I'll have more good news this spring. If you're interested in reading the essay, it's titled "The Sun Still Shines on the Worst Day of Your Life." It is at underthesunonline.com, and I also did a raw reading for it, which, if you aren't familiar, is where I read just a very short snippet of the work in progress of the handwritten draft before it sees any kind of revision, and then I reflect on it. So that is on my blog at alidawinternheimer.com, but of course I'll put links in the show notes at storyworkspodcast.com. So just go to this episode's post, get all the show notes. Now, my second exciting announcement. Some of you know that I've been a teacher or mentor, both at different times, for Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop over the years. And this spring, I'm going to be teaching my workshop, Memory, Emotion, Body. Because of COVID and lockdowns and the strange couple of years we've had, I am unable to teach it in the facilities. It's going to be a video course. Now, what this means for you is I'm putting together a live classroom through Zoom of the Memory, Emotion, Body workshop. And because of these special circumstances, doing it for the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop, I'm offering the live component at a pay-what-you-can sliding fee. So I hope to see you in this class. It is all about the story writer's first tools, our memories, emotions, and our physical bodies, and how we can mine and access our personal experience to create moving, compelling, sensory prose on the page for our readers that transports them into a lived experience. You can get all of the details about the workshop and sign up at storyworksfiction.com. And again, you can also just go to storyworkspodcast.com to today's episode, to this post. All of the links will be right there. You can learn more about Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop, more about the workshop itself, and also sign up and pay what you can. All right, third announcement. There's still time to join the fiction group coaching spring session. It is 3 months, 2 meetings per month, and I've got a great group of some very talented, dedicated writers. And there's still room for a few more in this session. So go to wordessential.com/editing/coach to get all of the details and apply today. We start our sessions on February 2nd, so don't wait. If you're thinking about it, go get the details, go see what it's all about. Look at the schedule. We've got a spring, summer, and fall session so that you have the option of continuing through the year, working on a long-form project, the novel, and really connecting with a group of peers through this journey. Again, just go to storyworkspodcast.com, today's episode page, and all of the links will be right there in the show notes. I would love to see you in the Memory, Emotion, Body workshop or the group coaching spring session. Check it out today. All right, enjoy this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to this week's Storyworks Roundtable. Today, Robert, Kathryn, and I are talking about idea development. You've been inspired, the lightning bolt struck, but now what? Before we dig into this topic, though, we are planning to do a series of shows where we talk about a topic with the specific purpose of linking it to past episodes that also discuss this topic to build a sort of rich library of knowledge for you. And Kathryn brought us this idea. So Kathryn, do you have anything you want to add to that to describe what we're doing?
I just think sometimes, especially for me, when I'm listening to a podcast, I listen to like the most recent episode, right? But I forget that there's hundreds sometimes of episodes behind it. And you can really get a lot from revisiting some of those back episodes. And I've been doing this in some of my own research lately, where I feel like I want to listen to a specific topic and really dig into it. So I thought it would be really cool to just kind of introduce people who maybe haven't heard some of these episodes to some relevant content, as we discuss a topic, because we do, sometimes we talk about the same things over and over again, and those things are important, right? Because when you get the repetition, you're like, oh, okay, like this is something that clearly it matters a lot, right? But oftentimes, we're coming from different angles because of the different situations that we're in or what we're working on. So I think it's a really beneficial thing to have multiple avenues to look at. So just giving you guys the resource. It's available, and it's much easier if you can just click a link and say, look at all those episodes. They're right there. So all of the episodes that are relevant will be linked in the show notes, and I do hope you guys check them out.
Definitely. And by the way, everybody, Kathryn does show notes every single week, and we always have links to what we reference during the show, whether it's other episodes we've done or books or movies we've talked about. So if you're only listening on, iTunes or YouTube, check out storyworkspodcast.com. And that's where you're going to get the show notes that Kathryn puts together, as well as the links. And there's also the video embedded on the page and the audio, which is downloadable direct from our page. So it's a great resource. Now.
Yeah. Well, and just to tag onto that, sorry, I'm like, I get nerdy about the show notes sometimes. So I put little timestamps at the end of each summary because I want you guys to be able to say, oh man, I remember they talked about that thing about the middle. And you can go into the show notes and say, oh, there it was right there. And it starts at this time. And so you could go re-listen to it, right? Because sometimes we're doing stuff and we don't have the luxury of taking that note. So I benefit hugely from listening back and doing the show notes just so that I do have that time to like pause, make a note, and move on. So there you go.
Yes, timestamps. I'm glad you reminded us.
That's a great resource. Excellent.
It is. Thank you. Yes, and all thanks to Kathryn for doing our show notes every week. All right. So this week's topic, idea development. Who wants to launch our conversation?
Well, I suppose we're talking about, you're walking down the street or you're in the shower, or it's, you wake up one night and you think, oh, there's this FBI agent and, they're looking after a high value target and they have to protect them. Yeah, that's going to be a great story. Well, of course it isn't yet. It's just either a scene or some idea about a character or some idea about a mini conflict perhaps, or a setting. But nonetheless, you've been motivated and stimulated. There's something going on in that unconscious there that's worth bubbling up. And I think one of the things that we can mistake that for is a story. So there's one thing to this. Okay, so what is the story? What is the arc? What is the overall premise and the conflict? I know we're going to go into these anyway, but it's really frustrating, I think, for some authors because we're known. Many of us known for chasing shiny objects. So you get these ideas, oh, that's great. And then my problem is I don't write them down. So there was something I was thinking about yesterday. It was a brilliant story. It was going to be a bestseller and everything. No,
Can I just pop in and say I was in the shower yesterday and I had just like 2 or 3 fully formed sentences run through my mind. And I was like, damn it, I'm going to lose it. So I slid
You ran
open my
naked through
shower
the
door,
house.
grabbed my phone, and I didn't want to get cold. So I shut the shower door and I was just holding it outside the stream of the water. And I spoke my sentences
Dictating.
into my voice app as best I could because they weren't the same as what went through my head.
Right.
And then dried the screen and put it back outside on the counter. Yes.
It's
I was
fully
like,
There you go.
I'm not losing
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
This
the
is
fully
how the
formed
professionals do
sentences.
it.
Yeah. Those are the worst because you're going to be like, that was not what I thought. Was not nearly as elegant when I wrote it down as it was when it went through my head.
Oh, I know. It's funny, isn't it? How late night ideas the next day you just think, what? A cat?
is
A cat on the moon? What was good about that? I have no idea. Anyway, so yes. So as Alida has just proven, ideas come and strike at any time. And I think when you haven't got so many words under your belt, it's the temptation is to think, right, now I've got a story. And then you wonder why, after having, say, put down that scene on paper, you get stuck. And so really where we're at now is, what do you do with the gem? What do you do with that first spark? And I know for me, it probably is first steps of maybe what you guys would call journaling, but, jotting down as much as possible as I can about it, because where there's one spark, there's more. So, things lead us, you work on associations. So, okay, they're an FBI agent. Well, where do they come from? Why are they there? What are what are they trying to do? What are their wants? What are their needs? Try and get something that's basic about their ordinary world, at least, before we try and think about, where they're propelled to.
Right.
So that's where I would start. Is I'd start literally. I wouldn't even be worried about story structure or even, oh my god, I've got to have a 3-act or a 5-act, or I've got to have my turning points and my plot points, my pinch points. Don't worry about that yet. That's starting out where I'm thinking. But I think the thing is that we're all really different in the way we approach these things. So what I probably echoed is a lot about my process specifically, but where would you go with this?
Well, I love the image of sparks igniting sparks, and kind of popped an image into my mind of like a spark jumping from one piece of kindling to another. And I do go to my journal and I just freeform it. Like you said, I don't worry about structure. I just write whatever I've got a hold of, if it's a snippet of a character or a situation, or, the type of career I want to write about, like the detective or something. And I mentally spitball on the pages of my journal, and one idea will lead to another idea. So it's very much that process of like sparks jumping gaps until the wood ignites.
Yeah, I've found through the years of doing this that I cannot jump on that idea spark. If I jump on the idea spark, I end up doing what Robert has so aptly talked about there, which is run out of fuel, right? And all of a sudden it just putters out. And I'm looking at this pile of words like, what did I just do? And what is it even there for? So what I have learned about myself personally is I need to look for idea collisions. So what idea that I previously have that now goes with this idea, that when they go together, that's where the magic is. So I have to let ideas bubble for a long time. And sometimes nothing else happens, right? There are no other ideas that collide with them. But occasionally you get that, oh, wait, hold on. 6 months ago, I had that. Where did I put that? Okay, flip. There it is, right? Oh, there it is. Now I have a story, right? And so sometimes my ideas need other ideas before they can become a fully formed idea. And I've had to learn patience to wait for that. Because otherwise I do just spin my wheels, and then I end up with words that aren't really useful because they took the idea in a place that maybe wasn't actually where it needed to go. And so now I've got my whole train going this direction, and I have to turn it around and try to go the other direction, when I could have just waited and then ended up with a better story to begin with.
Yeah, you definitely can't rush to drafting. My journaling phase can be long, it can be years. It might be happening simultaneously while I'm working on another project. So it doesn't feel like years because nothing is on hold. But it's that simmering process, or that waiting for the collision, waiting for the ignition to happen. And, I don't start the drafting process till I'm excited about it. I have to feel fired up, to stick with that metaphor, about the story idea to get to actual drafting.
Yeah, I think that's really important, actually, to keep the motivation that comes with the first spark, because otherwise, as Kathryn says, to continue the metaphor, you end up blowing the spark out when what you want to do is fan it so that it ignites your motivation. You can sit down and you've got something more fully formed to continue tapping into, that sort of subconscious creativity. And that's, I think, the worry is when you certainly for me, when I first started, I'd have ideas and then I'd wonder why I couldn't make them go anywhere. I like what Kathryn said about having the collision, because effectively what you're saying there is I found something to have conflict. And I suppose we have the danger that an idea by itself is really not necessarily a conflict. It might be. I mean, if you thought about how the story ends, then you can probably work backwards from there and work out what the conflict was and how it, so it depends where the idea flashed in, whether it was the start of a story or the middle or a particular scene.
Yeah. And I've found that I'm really good at certain things, right? Like, I'll get the idea for a character or a line of dialogue or something. And I've had to develop my ability to come up with situations. Like what the world or, other things that will contribute to that and make it a fully formed idea. Really easy to come up with a flash of a person. Oh, this person's so cool. Where do I put them? Crickets, right? Like, there's no way. So I've had to really work at, sometimes I just sit down and try to spin situations. I have no one to put them in, but that way I can have more than just a one kind of an idea, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's talk more about that process of going from initial spark to the drafting stage or to, fire burning. What do you do, Robert, to start getting into that drafting space?
For me, I think it probably comes from what's the curveball that's going to be thrown. Because by then, hopefully, I've got a character. It doesn't matter to me how developed they are. Sometimes I've got some idea of a role, but that's probably it. And I probably don't know what their wants and needs are overall. But I will probably have some idea about what's currently going on, the way ideas usually come to me. So it's usually, they're in the middle of something. So then I have to think about what curveball I'm going to throw at them. Sometimes that comes from messing around, just either thinking it or writing or something like that. And then when I've got that, I really have to back out, because I've got to now know, well, that's fine. That sounds exciting. And I've done this before. I've just written things where it's one exciting thing to another exciting thing. And then, you lose an overall theme, or there's no overall arc for the story, or you get to the middle and it's got nothing to do with the antagonist. So I know I'm good at creating curveballs and conflicts along the way. So I'll use that to get me started. Then I have to kind of back out and go, okay, now how does this fit to the story?
Yeah. It's interesting. You seem to think mostly in terms of plot to get started. And Kathryn, you mentioned setting and world building. Where is this character? And I think I do a lot of thematic thinking, like, what is my story about? Not in a plot sense, but in the humanistic or thematic sense. And then the things that start to take shape in my mind, both in terms of setting and in terms of plot and supporting characters, antagonists, is focused on that thing I'm exploring. How does this protagonist move through a world such that this is what I'm looking at?
I wonder if also that's driven a little bit by, the sort of expectations of the genres we typically read in as well. My favorite genres are generally action adventure. So, of course, I'm probably going to think in terms of action and how that plays. When I do back out, I will then think about the wants and needs of the character and how that connects into what changes they're going to go through, which may or may not drop out some kind of theme depending on what type of story it's going to be. With Kathryn being sort of immersed in, sort of your epic fantasy type stuff, it's going to be natural that you're going to start thinking, okay, what is it that they're dealing with here in the overall politico-religious magic, scenarios that the lone hero or heroine is battling against. And for Alida, where you're exploring sort of perhaps more literary themes from time to time, it makes sense that you might start there. So I think this is what I was saying at the start. It's hard to say, well, this is how you should develop an idea because it's kind of going to be very personal, but one should have, I think, a process for it, which may vary from book to book. But I think it helps not get stymied at just the idea stage. Like Kathryn said, you're just like, hey, this is great, I'll start writing, and then I'm run out of fuel.
Right.
I think it's good.
So whether your fuel's the setting or the theme or the plot probably doesn't much matter, as long as you know that that's a single thread, and at some point we've got to back out and find the other things that round it out, which is what 5 years of podcasts will tell you if you want to listen to them.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about before our organization systems and like ways of recording our ideas and things. But I think once you're at this development stage where, okay, I've got this idea, I know what the idea is, and now I need to develop it. You need a way of recording that works for you. And, not everybody is going to be, I have a page for my characters and a page for and a timeline for my plot. Like that's just not everybody works that way. And I've been finding more and more that the more I try to divvy it up into little boxes, the less my brain connects the boxes. And so I need to not do that, because I'll just be like, this is over here and this is over here. And the separation doesn't work for me. So I think the more you lean into your path, of organization, of outlining, of, journaling, of developing that character, the better the idea development is going to be, because you keep it accessible for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
At what point do you find yourself living the story in your head after you've had the idea?
It takes a while.
Yeah.
I have to have a really good character. Once I have a character who's speaking to me, then I'll start living it in my head, right? They have to have enough of a roundness that they can start talking about what's going on. Otherwise, I just, I have to sit down and dig into it to really start developing what's going on.
So I think that's one of the, sorry, I'll come back to you later. That's one of the exciting parts, isn't it? When it starts to take life in your head. And I'm thinking that's a key leap from just, I've had an idea in the shower to I'm now walking around with this and it's unfolding. And you've got enough flesh there, or enough. Let's go back to the metaphor. We've got enough of a little fire burning that we can throw gasoline on it. Alida.
Yeah, I think as soon as I feel that excitement for it, because it might not be playing out in my head like a movie start to finish, but I might get some setting. I might see a figure moving through a key part of my world, and that setting is coming to life for me, and then I'm excited to get that on the page. Or I might see a conversation between characters, so it can come in different forms, almost piecemeal. And then part of the fun is taking that thing, getting it down in the journal, so that when it's time to develop a scene or a chapter where that fits or around that, then I've captured what was in my head on paper, so it's not lost in the shower. So it's actually somewhere retrievable. And, weirdly, I find that I don't refer back to my journals. It's like I need the repository to hang on to what has to go into the story more so than I need to keep going back and mining the journal. And then I wonder if I'm losing really great material by not mining it, but
I feel like sometimes my journals, like not the first draft, but like the first, I guess, draft of the idea before I get to the first draft. And sometimes you just need to write it down to realize what's wrong with it. Even if it looks really good,
Yes.
when you write it down, you're like, oh, this is perfect. La, 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 la. And then 2 days later, you don't go back and look at it, but you're translating it and it isn't the same. It's like the second draft of the idea has come into, wherever else you're putting it, or into your outline or into your character development or whatever. You get these draft phases just by writing it down in some shape.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something else that can happen as well. So this, from just thinking about this, living it in your head, because I think that's important to give it life beyond the idea, and however that works, whether it's through plot or setting or themes or just a character. And I would agree. I think the character starts to have some life and starts talking. That's definitely important for me as well. And that annoys me when I get really, really what I think are fantastic lines of dialogue, and I'm in the car or something.
Yeah.
Crap, I've got to pull over and record that. It's brilliant. That's going to turn into a bestseller, just that one line there. You've probably seen those memes that people post on social media where they go, my storybook idea, and it's like Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night, just stunning and spectacular. And then the other little picture underneath it, how it actually plays out in practice, and it's kind of stick figures and just a wash of blue. And so don't despair if you feel like you've got this idea in your head that's just spectacular and movie-like, even if it isn't a fully fleshed out movie. And then when you come to actually write it down on paper, it feels flat. That's pretty normal, I think. It's part of the writing process is continuing to find the excitement, but not worrying about the fact that maybe on your first draft or even your notes prior to first draft, that it's sort of, you think, this is just juvenile or puerile or whatever. I mean, at some point, I think we all vacillate between, goodness gracious, I really am Shakespeare, to why I'm even doing this. This is the utter pile of poo.
Yes.
So true. Yeah, I think a good episode to link to is the one on premise, speaking of how you start with something that might look like nothing, that we can be really self-disparaging about, but you have to see it as a springboard to so much more. So it might feel trite and hackneyed and redundant and, like a pile of goo or poo, but then it's where you go from there that matters. So you take that nugget and you take those flames you've been nurturing and fanning and adding kindling to, and then you play and you write and you draft and you piece together and, keep going back to that journal or whatever form you put your repository of ideas. And
I think what if questions can be really helpful here. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about, plot, setting or theme or whatever, so what if the theme was this? Okay. Now, well, what if the theme was this, recovery from addiction? Or what if the theme was, about love, finding love? So, these things, I think you've got an idea already. So, and we talked about jumping spark to spark. Something can help that, or asking yourself questions, and whether you do that via journaling or just, taking a nice bath and not doing it in the shower, but kicking back and letting the ideas flow.
Right. Just don't drop your notebook in the tub.
That's right. Yeah. Or the phone.
Yeah, no kidding. Yes. Any final thoughts on idea development as we wrap this one up?
I think, welcome them in, and don't worry if at first they don't feel like they're going. I think Kathryn's earlier point was brilliant, is that, sometimes you just got to let them sit and wait for another one to collide with it.
Thank you for listening to the Storyworks Roundtable. Find all our shows, show notes, and videos at storyworkspodcast.com.